You just see steering wheel.
Those are $20.
Oh.
The time, Aaron?
Hey, you want me to put the pledge?
The flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This month, this meeting, Tuesday, February the 22nd, 2022, here at 8:30.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented, scratching off on our staff report number 3, development services. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Aye.
Approve the consent agenda A through O.
Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. Any public comment? No public comment?
They're running late.
Any general discussion? No. Okay, we'll move right along.
Our first item on our agenda is
Board of announce appointments to Hamilton Community Center Board.
So we were gonna wait and announce all of the board members together, but that puts us after their meeting. So we are going to go ahead. We've had some trouble getting that board put together. So we're gonna go ahead and I would move to put Dorlin Redmond on the Hamilton Community Center Board as an alternate, so that she is for the meeting next week.
second.
Moving right along.
Staff report, Road and Drainage Department, Bruce Wright, Wayne White. This monthly report.
Good.
Oh, so you already got it. Crusher, we shut the crusher down January 6th, and we've been using the crusher crew, cross-training them, using them when our plow operators are out, and then they're down Elk Springs helping the truck crew. So we got them busy, and it's just easier on the crusher, not trying to start it when it's real cold. So it's working out. County Road 104 is part of the old highway that we took over. The asphalt's deteriorated to the point where it's just dry, crumbly. They have gravel over the top of it, but it just wants to blow off of it, won't set down and hold on. So we went in, we've done it before, up powder wash and that. We rip it up with the dozer and just pulverize the asphalt back down, lay it back out again and cover it with new gravel. Seems to work pretty good. So that's what's kind of keeping everybody busy all winter as far as Dildine's guys and truck crew and stuff.
Where's 104 at?
Skull Creek.
Skull Creek. And see, that used to be didn't that used to be the state gave that to the county?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. It's
Right.
it's state highway. The state highway shop's right there.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Just that little-
And Dan and I went and visited with those folks. And matter of fact, they called and appreciated it and said, you guys did a good job.
Okay, grader crew plowing snow when they need to. Sounds like we got pretty good snow up north. Even up to a foot. I don't know. And then they're in between times, they're building a little rack that instead of laying all of our wing masts and stuff in a pile every year in the spring, they're building a rack they can stand them up. We've actually got a rack that we hang sanders on, but they're retrofitting it to keep them up out of the mud and stuff. Bridge crew is plowing snow on the paved roads. They spent 180 hours plowing courthouse, Loudy Simpson, Sunset Meadows, the library, and the new courthouse and road and bridge shop. With the help of the shop welder, they also went up to County Road 1 and reinforced the understructure of a bridge that was wanting to move on us up there. So landfill, everything's running smooth. The hospital demo's finished, everything fit. Shane and Dan went to a manager meeting or a school in Fort Collins last week. Those classes will be helpful in keeping up with the latest rules and regulations from Department of Health. So that's about it.
Yep.
We got some work out there today and tomorrow maybe, and maybe springtime.
Yeah.
That's all I got. Any
Very well.
questions?
I don't have any. No. Thank you, Bruce. Appreciate you coming in.
Thanks.
And we scratch number 3 until the next meeting.
We have a presentation on Yampa River Leafy Spurge Project.
Not here yet. I'm assuming, I know she's driving from Dinosaur, so I'm wondering if the roads weren't worse. I got a text from her yesterday evening that said she was gonna give herself an extra hour. So I said, if you don't make it in time, I'm sure we can run it back and
Our
reschedule.
meetings go pretty fast, so try to be very.
Yeah, but I haven't heard from her this morning.
We don't start maintenance on them until 7 either, so that
Right.
doesn't help.
Yeah, which might be 9 in Dinosaur, so by the time they get out that far west, but I guess I don't really know. Other than maybe bumping it back, or is this the last agenda item? Okay. Can I step out and try to call her?
Yes. Yeah. And we'll have Mel Singh here for
So you'd like to clear the room very quickly, is that what you're saying? I was named after a music teacher. Melodious name. Run you all out. Missed that?
What's that? We already did public comment.
Since we missed it.
We already did public comment. Shoot, we're ready.
Again?
Sure.
Well, the reason I'm late is because I got this last minute thing that I had to print out. And it is a comment from the group of ladies over the voting things. And so, which I would like to say, first of all, I support them. And I know based on a prior conversation, some people think that this next election is not really all that important. And it really is a governor election that we don't want because of what he is, the reprehensible things he's already done to the Western Slope. And also House and Senate they're important. All elections are important. But so the problem that I am personally having is that no one is willing to say, oh, there might be something going on. Not necessarily right here with our people, but beyond that. I watched that presentation with the cybersecurity guy, and I cannot get the picture of the refrigerator doors, one in the front, one in the back. I can't get that out of my mind. That is possible to happen. I know that from my career. So this is a statement that they asked me to read, which I will. It says, the law states that it is the decision of the Board of County Commissioners to decide whether or not to use electronic voting machines. A group of Moffat County citizens has presented evidence and expert opinion on how the Moffat County machines are not secure and can be compromised. We have explained that there are electronic election records that are not accessible to the voters of Moffat County. According to the law, we, the citizens of Moffat County, are to have access to any and all voting records for 25 months. Our clerk tells us that she is not allowed to open the machines and get those electronic records out so that we, the citizens, can see what goes on with our votes. There is a lawsuit going on in Colorado right now, including Rio Blanco, Elbert, and Park counties, about citizens being able to gain access to these records. If there is no fraud going on in these machines, why won't the Secretary of State allow these elected officials to access the voting records for their citizens? Moffat County should not use any electronic voting machines until they can be opened and forensically examined, proven secure against fraud. Commissioners, it is your responsibility to decide to use machines or not. You need to show us forensic proof that these machines are secure, or choose to use no machines in the 2022 election in Moffat County. And I can give you this printed out.
Yeah, you can give us a copy.
Thanks.
Excuse me.
Next, we will have their feelings first. So again, still, it's important. It's very.
Well, and we did say at that meeting too, that it, if you're looking for reasonable doubt of whether or not electronics can be secure, that was there.
It's there.
But what's the overall benefit at the end of the day if we're spending money to fight something? Is there any way to recoup any of that money? Do we have that money to spend in the first place? And what resolution do we get out of spending any additional?
I believe based on the lack of certification for those machines since 2017, because it's supposed to be done every 2 years. And I think based on that alone, you have a way to get out.
I'll talk to you after, because we did some research on that and they were. Certification is, but I'll talk to you after. Hello.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go back to we have a presentation for the Yampa River Leafy Spurge Project Program Update. Is it Tamara?
Yes. Hi.
How was your trip in?
It was a little hairy.
We're glad you made it.
Apologize for being late.
So that's okay.
Do you have the slides? They're up there. That would be great.
Yeah, just come on up and have a seat right here and then you can
Oh.
hear you and
Thank you for letting me come in and update you on, should I just tell you when? On the Yampa River Leafy Spurge project. If you look at it with the whole screen view, where it says view at the top. Full screen mode.
Am I gonna be able to switch that if they Mason?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll be able to use your arrows to go next.
There you go. And then you can just pitch down. It's been 3 years now and all your faces are different from when we started. But I'll go straight to the budget on the next page. Because that's where the rubber meets the road with managing weeds and with the efforts that we all put in and the contributions that you made to help us out. If you look at the left column with the money in it, we got $89,000 from the Basin Roundtable. And over 2 years, both Moffat and Routt County each contributed $15,000 over 2 fiscal years. The University of Wyoming about $12,600, and then we had $34,000 of in-kind matching offered up from volunteers and partners on the project for a total of about $166,000. Over 3 years, we spent all but $22 of the CWCB money, and we exceeded our volunteer and partner in-kind contributions by about 35% or so. So our total there was about 46,000. So we did a good job of spending the money. and go ahead and page down. And over the period of time, we got our notice to proceed in November of 2018. We finally packed up all the deliverables on the grant in December of last year, and those were all accepted by the roundtable and CWCD. And over the 3 years, we did a lot of work to engage with landowners, and most of this work has been in western Routt County and eastern Moffett County, because that's kind of ground zero for where leafy spurge got started in the area. We also, over the course of the project, realized we were generating a lot of information, data, and just knowledge on what this weed is and where it goes and what it does. And so we developed a website that's helped us get that information out to efficient ways. And, even though the grant is complete now and closed out, we plan to continue because the leafy spurge problem isn't gone yet. But we're making some progress, and so I'll update you on kind of where we are right now. That is our website. That's where everything we've ever done is posted. We maintain that website and update it on a fairly regular basis, and are working now with the Education and Outreach Committee of the Roundtable to come up with other ideas or more ideas for how to get the information out to producers. That website has data, maps, it's got all of our reports, information on meetings, and also other research and that kind of information. Okay. So the grant had 3 specific task areas. The first one was, where is leafy spurge? And we had a couple of ways of trying to determine that. In, I would say, downstream of Craig, it's mostly along the river. And it got a lot worse after the 2011 flood. It took 3 or 4 years for the plant to express itself, but by 2015, it was clear that that extended period of high water had dropped a lot of seeds out there, and new populations were starting up from that. So it's not very easy to map right along the river. So we had a couple strategies for that. One was to just go ahead and get in boats and go down the river, and where we had permission to map on private property, we did that. And where we didn't have permission, we just made note as we were floating by of where the spurge is. All of that information went onto our website, although we masked any areas where we didn't have private landowner permissions. Although we did get a lot of cooperation from landowners. So it was really better than we expected, to be honest. And then we shared that data with the University of Wyoming. There's a picture of Ben Bell, who I think you saw his presentation at the Colorado First Meeting last week. He's mapping spurge there on a tablet. Go ahead. And this is just an example of what the maps that were posted on the website look like. This one I picked for a couple of reasons. One is it really is the area where we think leafy spurge got going in our region. It also has the county line, so you can kind of orient yourself in the picture there. And that's what our field mapping produced. So the red areas are really high density spurge, the yellow are medium to low density, and then the yellow are just 1 to 5% density of leafy spurge. So You can see in those meander areas along the river, that's the habitat that it likes the most, at least when it's just getting going. And go ahead to the next one. Now this one shows both what we did mapping in the field, although now those areas are just outlined, they're not solid polygons. But the other colors on there depict what we worked with the University of Wyoming on to look at satellite imagery to figure out whether it was possible to get an idea where leafy spurge is using satellite imagery. So a grad student at University of Wyoming named Chloe Matilio took the data we sent her and used that data to train computer algorithms that manipulated satellite imagery that had multispectral. So the satellites record light coming off the surface of the Earth, and they analyze the spectrum of that reflected light. And then the data that we provided allowed Chloe to train computer algorithms to interpret light that might be reflected off of leafy spurge plants. So it's really technical. And the data, the information she provided us, it's proving to be challenging just to figure out how to explain it to regular people who aren't techno geeks. But this is kind of an example of where I think we're headed for trying to make that interpretation. So the red dots that you see there represent areas that we're pretty confident the light reflecting off the surface of the Earth in those places is reflecting off of leafy spurge plants. The orange or the yellow, we're less confident that that light reflecting off might represent leafy spurge plants. The green, we have leafy spurge could be there, but we're pretty low confidence that that light coming off of there is bouncing off of leafy spurge plants. So it doesn't tell us exactly where the spurge is. It tells us where is the best place to go look productively, and likely that you'll find it there. Those would be the red dots. And you can see that those red dots do correspond pretty closely with what we mapped, either red or orange. So the model that she was able to develop using the data that we provided her did a really good job of allowing us to look at a much broader area using satellite imagery and figure out where maybe do we have leafy spurge right now that we should be worried about, and go out and have a look. Okay. The second, I should back up just a second and say we're still working on the other part of Chloe's work, which was to take the data that I just showed you and compare it with similar data from Fremont County, Wyoming, and use that to tell us where in our area might we have areas that are vulnerable to leafy spurge infestation. So if we didn't do anything about this problem over time, how bad could it get? And that work is, again, really technical and hard to figure out how to interpret, but we're still working on that part of it. But the sort of short answer is we have a lot of upland areas that are vulnerable, and so we need to pay attention to this problem. Task number 2 was aimed at doing research to help us identify what strategies might be available to us for managing leafy spurge in riparian areas along the river, which are sensitive habitats. The chemical that's most effective on leafy spurge at least historically, is Tordon, which is not labeled for use near the water. And so the tools in the toolbox are more limited in those environments. And so we wanted to see if there were maybe some options that we could start recommending to producers. So a master student named Hannah Kuhns looked at that for us. She used targeted grazing with sheep. Leafy spurge is toxic to cattle and horses, but not to sheep or goats. And so we wanted to look at that as a potential integrative technique. And she did that in combination and separately from 4 different herbicides that are labeled for use near water. And that work was not as conclusive as we would have wished. She had a couple chemicals that suggested at least you can suppress seed production in leafy spurge. And Jesse's done a great job of taking Hannah's work, and he's trying new combinations and new timings and different settings. And so Jesse's sort of taken what we could get from that research, and now he's doing his own experimenting, working with landowners to try to come up with something that will work in that environment. Sheep grazing, as many people suggested to us before we even tried it, is not really practical in riparian settings. It's just too difficult and just not practical. The other piece of Hannah's work that was new and interesting and useful is she realized that root fragments that erode out of banks during floods are capable of moving downstream in the river and landing on new substrate and starting to grow again. So seeds are agents of spread, but so are root fragments that erode out of banks. And that was new information that wasn't previously known. So that also gave us something new to work with. And there's the sheep that came all the way down from the University of Wyoming. I think that might be across from Lottie Simpson, but I'm not sure.
Find anything closer?
And there's Hannah doing her calibrated herbicide applications. And then our third task involved working with kids and biological control, which is introduction of insects that damage the leafy spurge. The insects themselves come from the same place the spurge came from, which is Eurasia. And we did hold a successful couple of days in the field with local kids from Boys and Girls Club in 2020, or actually it was 2019. 2020 and 2021, COVID kind of put the kibosh on the kid projects, but we're hoping to get back to do another one this summer. Go ahead. Initially, this biocontrol component of the grant proposal was a minor component of the work. But it turned out to be a lot more interesting than we thought. These are the 4 types of insects that we have in the area. The 2 on the left are flea beetles, and they're really teensy little guys. The one in the bottom right is a stem boring beetle that's about 1 inch long, and then the caterpillar at the top is a hawk moth. The 3 beetles have been released intentionally in the area a number of times over the years, dating back to about 1989, as far as we could determine, and also more recently. The hawk moth was released intentionally in Wyoming, but never in Colorado that we could determine. But we find it everywhere, so it's gotten here on its own. And so these insects were tried by a number of people over the years, and when we asked about it with the people who had been working on spurs in the area in 2018, the indication was, well, it doesn't work here. The bugs don't make it through the winter, or they drown out during the high flows, and so it just doesn't work. So I thought, well, okay, have we actually gone back to look and see if it's not working? And it didn't appear that anyone had actually gone back to see what happened and places where the bugs had been put out. So the first thing we did was find old records, either from the Colorado Department of Ag or local folks who had been involved in this work, just collecting their recollections. We found 44 records of 44 releases on 42 sites between 1989 and 2017. I went back to 24 of those sites, and in the cases where leaf spurge was still present, which is about half of those, the bugs were still present every single time. So some of those were back to 1989, and the bugs had clearly been there for 30 years. When I realized that, I told the crews that were out mapping the spurge, hey, take a bug net and see if we can find these bugs. They started finding them miles and miles from any place that they had placed previously. So it was accumulating evidence that the bugs have been here for 30 years and probably done some work. We don't know how much, because nobody really looked or measured or did anything to help us know what exactly they're doing. But the fact that they're still here suggests they're doing something. And so we looked at the scientific literature and found at least one study in Idaho suggesting that it might be worth trying this in a little more intentional way in riparian areas here, but that it would take some extra work because their favorite habitat isn't along the water, it's in the uplands. So that's the because we're finding them so frequently, it's also picked up that the little stem-boring beetle, the long one with the little red face, was more prevalent in the riparian settings near the river. And a lot less is known about that bug compared to the fruit beetles, which are more prevalent in upland areas in the study more. So there's still something to learn, but what we're attempting to do now in the next several years is get as many bugs as possible from wherever we can get them, either from the Colorado front range or from private rivers in Montana, and saturate as much of the infected here with as many bugs as possible. Yes, some suppression, reductions, areas where it's so rare and so not cost effective to use it.
So we don't know if the bug's productive or not. We don't know if it's actually knocking it back.
We don't know for certain. No.
We're starting to record this.
We are going back to at least 10 sites a year to monitor. And that monitoring will help us pick up whether the insects are establishing. It's a little harder to figure out what the exact effect of the vegetation is because we don't have any no bugs to compare it to, because everywhere we look we find the bugs. So the bugs having been here for so long, and we only started looking in the last 3 years, puts us at a disadvantage for having scientific proof that they're being effective. But having done this myself for 35 years before I retired, and now spending time looking, my eyes start to pick up patterns that suggest the bugs won't get rid of the spurge, but they will push it out of a dominant position. It makes it shorter and less dense and produce fewer flowers, which means fewer seeds. And there will still be patches of spurge in these areas where the bugs are obviously active. But the rest of the spurge is having to fight harder to compete with the surrounding grass or other more desirable matrix vegetation. And that makes sense biologically because the part of the damage that's done by the bugs is to the root system. The adults that we see lay eggs that get into the root system and that they spend time eating in there, and that's where they overwinter. And so when you think about what it means to the plant, it's trying to grow an above ground body part from a very damaged root system. And so it just makes it less competitive. So it's not going to be a silver bullet, but it looks like if we really work at it, that it'll help a lot. And that's what we're hoping for anyway. My guess is that being near the river, high water extended flood year like 2011 is going to knock the bugs back because they do spend part of the life cycle in the soil. But that a series of drought years is going to allow them to do well. So it's not a solution that we can just dump out there and walk away. We're going to have to watch for a bad cycle for the bugs if there's scheduled high water years that we have to go in augments. But then drought years, that'll be a chance for the populations to grow and get bigger and do more damage. And so monitoring will be important to sort of help us figure this out. And also it will help us determine where might there be scenarios that the bugs are doing really well, where we could maybe post a catch and take event for producers where we could work with the conservation districts to get information out and say, hey, on such and such a day, probably in late June, we will host a day where you can bring a bucket and we'll help you catch bugs and you can take them home.
Have you seen any negative impacts of the bugs on anything else?
No.
You just hope that the chemical that you put on the thing doesn't kill the bugs.
Yeah, there's no evidence that it does, other than if you get a really good kill on that patch, you might be removing
Right.
80% of the habitat and but so in the big areas, we've kind of started working the edges in with as much capacity as we have and leaving something for the bugs in the middle.
And so our website has maps that show where we have put the bugs in what years, and we'll continue to update that. Last year we were hoping to hit Little Yampa Canyon. That was our priority, but the bugs came late on the Front Range because it was cold and wet over there in the spring, and the water dropped out early because it was dry over here. So by the time we could get bugs, there wasn't enough water to take a boat down the canyon, but that's our priority for this year. So we'll have a bunch more dots in Moth County, hopefully at the end of this year. And that's how little the flea beetles are. We bring them back from the front range with some leafy spurge for them to eat while they're sitting in the cooler. And we try to get them out as fast as possible because they start to die if we don't. Go ahead. And that's what I look like when I'm monitoring out there. Although you can't see all the mosquitoes on my face. Okay. Go ahead. And that's what I've got for you, unless you have some questions or anybody else has questions. And just want to thank you for your support. We couldn't have gotten the grant without that match. And I think we got some really productive work done with the grant, and really appreciate the continued support. I know you don't have a lot of money to work with in your budget, and so what you sent us was wonderful, and we will definitely put it to good use, getting more bugs out there this year, and hopefully getting some more education information out for consumption.
I was excited about the youth class. It was too bad that had to be canceled.
Yeah, but we're planning a new one, and we've been working. We were working with Jessica at Extension, and I just met with
Megan.
So we're doing that and working with NRCS, and hopefully we'll pick that up again this year and do some more.
Thank you for coming in for the update.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you. That looks like our end here. Nothing else on the agenda. This meeting is adjourned. You bet. Thank you.
That's my prediction.